Hello friends, welcome to Star Explainer. Tales of Herding Gods Part 373 explains based on novel. So let's start explanation. Qin Mu was a little confused. On the ghost ship, Celestial Empress and Zhu Wuchen were buried in the same coffin, and guarded by the 8 dragons. It couldn't be wrong, he saw it with his very own eyes. Yet, this lady named Yun Chuxiu in front of him looked exactly the same as Zhu Wuchen. Was there really someone in this world that was born exactly the same as Zhu Wuchen? Impossible. Zhu Wuchen is a perfect body created by Celestial Venerable Ling as a weapon to seduce the ancient Celestial Emperor. He, who was famed for his shrewdness, died under her beauty. No one would look exactly like her. Could this lady named Yun Chuxiu be Zhu Wuchen from the ghost ship? All sorts of thoughts flooded Qin Mu's mind uncontrollably. I was only able to escape from the ghost ship because I did a lot of research into Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art. In addition, I also had some understanding of the unchanging divine art and the power of the 4 deities and all of the feathered forest guards, general's power, before I could escape the ancient ship. Besides me, who else could accomplish that? Although he appeared calm, internally, he was in shock when observing the kneeling Yun Jianli. Could this Yun Jianli have some power unbeknownst to gods and demons? Was he able to enter the ghost ship and extract Zhu Wuchen? Nevertheless, time seemed to be running out. His big senior brother, Wei Suifeng, was currently on the ghost ship, and Qin Mu had tried to rescue him before coming to the celestial heavens. Should Yun Jianli have boarded the ghost ship after that, he couldn't have been Wei Suifeng's opponent. Even if he could rescue Zhu Wuchen from the ghost ship, he couldn't have returned to the celestial heavens so quickly. After all, the Phoenix ship that Qin Mu took was the fastest divine weapon in the world today. Considering how Yun Jianli wasn't a god, even if he had such a fast ship, he couldn't have such great magic power to utilize this precious artifact. What if he went to the ghost ship before Wei Suifeng did and took Zhu Wuchen away then? Celestial Venerable Yun and Celestial Venerable Ling had good ties, and more than half of the Yun family had documents relating to Celestial Venerable Ling's unchanging divine art. Qin Mu's gaze moved from Yun Jianli's body as he thought, even if Yun Jianli took Zhu Wuchen, it's impossible that he could keep her alive. After all, Zhu Wuchen is just a body of Celestial Empress, and rescuing a body would be useless to him. Unless it was Celestial Empress herself. He looked down at the bowing Yun Chuxiu, and his eyebrows jumped as he moved forward to lift both of them up. He laughed and said, "Get up. Our age is similar, so there's no need for such formalities." Internally, it was as if his heart was filled with fierce waves as he continued to the rise. If it's Celestial Empress, it's possible. I once tried to summon the soul of Celestial Empress from her corpse, but I only discovered that she wasn't dead yet. She also sensed my presence. It's likely that when she heard that I was going to the celestial heavens, she formed an idea to extract Zhu Wuchen. If that's the case, the lady within the body would be Celestial Empress, and she would be the puppet of Celestial Empress. But more and more thoughts emerged in his mind. Then, why did ancient Celestial Emperor order Green Deity of the Eastern Sky to drown Wei Suifeng? He was trying to exchange Wei Suifeng for the ghost ship in a clear attempt to obtain the bodies of Celestial Empress and Zhu Wuchen, wanting to use them against today's Celestial Empress. Unless the person inside Zhu Wuchen's body is the ancient Celestial Emperor. His brain was about to explode from the limitless possibilities present and his inability to deduce the truth as a result. Yun Jianli and Yun Chuxiu rose as Qin Mu smiled and invited them to take a seat. He excused himself with a smile. "It's my first time here, and I have nothing here. Having to borrow shelter, I have neglected both of you." Yang observed the back of Qin Mu's neck curiously, and saw that the goosebumps on it had multiplied. In addition, she saw cold sweat dripping down his neck, another clear indicator of his nervousness. Young master's forehead doesn't sweat while the back of his neck does. Who did he learn this from? Yang wondered. Yun gently swiftly replied, Celestial Venerable, you imparted your skills to the masses, giving them a chance to achieve their dreams of becoming a god, an unrivaled merit of yours. I'm merely here upon the command of my ancestor, to plead guilty to you, Celestial Venerable. Shocked, Qin Mu asked, Celestial Venerable Yun's command. What crime did he commit? My ancestor, in an attempt to save the commoners from disasters, was forced to assume the identities of Celestial Venerable Mu and Celestial Venerable Qin. Using those names, he rallied the people in order to build the heaven-hand celestial heavens and attain a lifeline for the commoners. Hence, he left behind a command to his descendants that if they were to meet Celestial Venerable Mu, they were to plead guilty to him and Celestial Venerable Qin. Yun gently rose before he kowtowed again, saying, My ancestor already met founding emperor and pleaded guilty to him. Nevertheless, they couldn't find Celestial Venerable Mu. Today, I'm lucky enough to finally meet Celestial Venerable Mu. As the unfilial son of the Yun family, I hereby plead guilty to Celestial Venerable Mu on behalf of my ancestor. Qin Mu's heart was moved, and he asked rhetorically as he rose, What crime did Celestial Venerable Yun commit? There's no need for such formality, please rise. Yun gently continued to kowtow as he said, Although you don't blame me, I still carry the burden of my ancestors' words and thus need to pay my formalities. He insisted on finishing his formalities before he rose. Qin Mu invited him to take a seat, as he subtly interrogated him behind a smile. I met your ancestor Celestial Venerable Yun here, but I didn't have a chance to talk to him in detail. Where did your sister Yun Chuxiu come from? I heard from Brother Qi that your family's bloodline has been passed on by one son only, with each generation comprised of only one son. Yun gently had an elegant vibe, and the demeanor befitting a son of the Yun family. Although he was the sickly master, he had an abnormal charm. He replied, Chuxiu is a sworn sister that I have recognized recently. Her surname is Yun, though she isn't part of the Yun family. I observed that she was extraordinarily clever and able. In addition, she lived alone, so I recognized her as a sister to facilitate care. Yun Chuxiu said, while smiling, I heard that my brother wanted to pay his respects to Celestial Venerable Mu, so I came along. I didn't expect Celestial Venerable Mu to be so young. Every frown and every smile of hers was so enthralling that people couldn't help but imagine all types of fantasies in their minds. Her smile felt different for Qin Mu and Qi Jiui. Qin Mu, due to his strong consciousness, his guard, and Granny Sai's heavy influence, was influenced little by it. However, Qi Jiui imagined more from that one smile of hers. Inside his mind, scenes of befriending her, falling in love with her, and becoming her partner unwittingly appeared. As the faint yet melodious music reached his ear, he imagined, in that very instant, a scene of their children running around their legs. It was only when Yun Chuxiu stopped speaking that his imagination ended. His heart was beating rapidly and chaotically, while his face was completely red. It was as if this was his first love. Qin Mu glanced at him and coughed. The coughing sound was akin to a loud bang in the mind of Qi Jiui, shattering his emotions and feelings. Qi Jiui was shocked as he reflected on what just happened. This is my first time meeting her, but my heart was affected so heavily. She is so beautiful that I can't rein in my feelings. Qin Mu laughed. Sister Chuxiu and brother Jianli would make a great couple. It's a pity that you ended up as siblings. Yun Chuxiu's face turned mildly red, which contained the shyness of a young lady as she glanced at Yun Jianli. Yun Jianli accommodated him, saying, What a funny joke, Celestial Venerable. As a person about to die, I don't dare to hinder Sister Chuxiu's future. In addition, I already have a family with a son. Speaking of which, are you about to get married? Qin Mu was weak, but he laughed heartily and replied, Brother Jinli, I too am about to die. If you don't mind, both of you can call me Cult Master Qin like Brother Qi. There's no need to call me Celestial Venerable. To be truthful, I just celebrated my 33rd birthday. Yun Chuxio was shocked as she laughed, which she tried to cover up. Celestial Venerable, you are younger than me by a couple of years. Upon seeing her bearing, Qi Jui once again heard the enchanting music and imagined the romantic scenes with her. Qin Mu's cough brought him back to reality. Qi Jui's forehead was swarmed by cold sweat as he thought, I'm done for. My heart is finished. Although Sai Yuyu from the primordial realm is also beautiful, she never tempted others. However, this lady turned her beauty and her charm into weapons. Qin Mu looked at Yun Jinli and carried on with the conversation. I have heard that when Yun family members cultivate to the divine bridge realm and attempt to enter the god realm, they will suddenly die. Considering Celestial Venerable Yun was the pioneer of the divine bridge god realm, why do his descendants have such bad luck? Yun Jinli sadly replied, I don't know about this. Generations of the Yun family have hired countless famous doctors and divine beings to examine the illness, yet they cannot find anything. Actually, I cultivated to the divine bridge realm 5 years ago. I just don't dare to finish it. Qin Mu was curious, asking, I'm well versed in medicine, could you open your divine treasure and let me examine it? Yun Jinli calmly opened his divine treasure, and Qin Mu observed it carefully. All he saw was that Yun Jinli's divine treasures were normal, except for his divine bridge divine treasure, which was bigger than others. Other than that, there was nothing special. Qin Mu's eyes landed on his primordial spirit. Yun Jinli's primordial spirit was extremely powerful, as it drifted energetically on the divine bridge. Qin Mu carefully examined his primordial spirit and failed to find any problems. He gazed deeper than before, turning to look at Yun Jinli's celestial palace. Wing! The back of Qin Mu's head suddenly erupted in flames, forming a ring of flames. Within the ring was a huge eye of flames, which stared straight into the deepest part of Yun Jinli's celestial palace. Yun Jinli was shocked. The ring of flames behind Qin Mu's head gave him the feeling that it was a gift from the ancient gods, but not exactly so. As expected of Celestial Venerable, to produce such a level of divine arts that even I can't understand it. His heart was filled with admiration as he said, Celestial Venerable Mu, you're only 33 years old. To have such an accomplishment at such a young age makes you terrifying. The ring of flames behind Qin Mu's head gradually disappeared. Within the heart of his brows, the third eye of his gradually opened and continued to inspect Yun Jinli to find the source of his problem. This eye of his was unique, a god eye that was born recently. Although Qin Mu didn't find out the exact use of this god eye, it did absorb his body's blood, vital qi, and consciousness before being born. Additionally, it absorbed Earth Count's horn and the ground primordium origin stone, which became part of the eye. Thus, one could imagine how extraordinary this god eye must be. Qin Mu's god eye fully opened and momentarily observed the source of Yun Jinli's black qi. The black qi of Yun Jinli's eyebrow came from his consciousness. It rejected all other places within his body, including the primordial spirit, divine treasures, and vital qi. However, this was but the surface of it all. Qin Mu used his god eye to carefully observe it, and saw a horrifying scene. The bloodline of Yun Jinli was tangled up with countless strands of black qi, which reacted with Qin Mu's third eye and allowed him to recount the history of such a bloodline. Qin Mu's third eye managed to see the memory of the bloodline. The memory of the bloodline was unique, inherited generation after generation. It was just that seeing it wasn't easy, for it was hidden. It was the first time that Qin Mu discovered this use of his third eye. He immediately saw the figure of another man within the black qi, which should have been Yun Jinli's father. Shrouded within the black qi of his father, he saw Yun Jinli's grandfather. He traced the history of the bloodline, and the figures of young men appeared one after another. They were the Yun family's ancestors, from celestial venerable Yun all the way until now. Countless ancestors of Yun Jinli were shrouded by this black qi, and as a result, they died at a young age, their souls dispersed. From celestial venerable Yun until now, in a million years' time, not one person from the countless generations of the Yun family had lived to the point of becoming a god. Qin Mu traced the source of the black qi of the bloodline, and at the very end, he saw the moment that celestial venerable Yun fell. He saw a figure shrouded in foggy black qi. This was likely the source of the Yun family's troubles. It was probably why the bloodline of the Yun family was carried on by single sons only, and why every generation of the Yun family failed to live long enough to become a god. Suddenly, within his mind, the voice of Shu Jan appeared and said, "This youth was cursed. This curse lies deep within his bloodline, and as long as the bloodline exists, the same curse will be born. This is a curse set up by a master of creation. This type of curse will get stronger as his cultivation gets stronger too. When his consciousness reaches a certain level, he will die." Qin Mu's consciousness trembled as he asked, "How do you break through this curse? Give me more blood and consciousness, and I can teach you how to use the grand primordium origin stone to break such a bloodline curse." Shu Jan's voice echoed. Qin Mu coldly laughed. "Shu Jan, whether Yun Jinli lives or dies, I don't care. I still don't know his motive and stand. I won't save him just because he's the descendant of celestial venerable Yun." Shu Jan pondered for a moment before pointing out, "The master of creation, who poisoned him, is very likely one of the celestial venerables." Qin Mu plainly asked, "Is that related to me?" Shu Jan went silent once again, and after some time, said, "You help me search for this master of creation, and I will impart to you the technique needed to use the grand primordium origin stone to cultivate consciousness." Qin Mu cunningly proposed, "You impart the cultivation technique first, and teach me how to use the grand primordium origin stone to break the curse on the Yun family bloodline, then I will search for that person for you." "You?" Shu Jan was furious before he suddenly laughed and said, "Deal." Yun Jinli and Yun Chuxiu quietly sized up Qin Mu. He had used his third eye to observe Yun Jinli for a long time, yet nothing had happened. Yang Er and the dragon Qilin were also weirded out. Qin Mu had been silent and still for a long time. It was as if time has stopped. What they didn't know was that Qin Mu was comprehending the techniques that Shu Jan had imparted to him, and was attempting to borrow the grand primordium origin stone to cultivate his consciousness. The trick the master of creation used to train his consciousness was, in today's language, named Supreme Palace Enclosure Higher Knowledge. It made use of the grand primordium origin stone to visualize the Supreme Palace enclosure. Originally, Qin Mu thought that the techniques used by the masters of creation were simple and boorish. However, unexpectedly, the Supreme Palace Enclosure Higher Knowledge was extremely complex. Such consciousness techniques were cultivated by meditating about the forms of the ancient gods of the constellations, and having one's consciousness create the 20 constellations within the grand primordium origin stone. Add to that the 78 ancient star sovereigns, and one would form the Supreme Palace Enclosure, which lit up the space of the grand primordium origin stone. As long as one cultivated according to this method, one could greatly strengthen their consciousness. But Qin Mu gently comprehended it and felt that the Supreme Palace Enclosure Higher Knowledge could only light up one part of the grand primordium origin stone, and that it was likely only one part of the technique, not the complete one. Obviously, Shu Jan hid some parts of the technique from him and didn't impart the entirety of the cultivation technique. The techniques that we use to cultivate our consciousnesses might not be suited for the bunch of you. After all, our race is different. Shu Jan remarked, additionally, your consciousness is weak. Currently, you still cannot fully understand this youth's bloodline curse, and thus need to cultivate for a period of time. Qin Mu, filled with confidence, immediately utilized the Supreme Palace enclosure higher knowledge, proclaiming, "I'm an overlord body, I can definitely cultivate it." Shu Jan was shocked and exclaimed, "Overlord body? What race does it belong to?" Refusing to answer, Qin Mu saw the giant ball of flesh roll on the grand primordium origin stone's sacrificial altar. The ball soon split in two and revealed a giant eye, which surveyed its surroundings. Within the space engulfed with the red light of the grand primordium origin stone, one constellation after another suddenly rose, lighting up the area and forming the 20 constellations. This youngling's comprehension isn't bad, but it's easy to light up the Supreme Palace enclosure's 20 constellation. Visualizing the 78 gods will be difficult since I haven't imparted the visualization map to him. The giant eyeball, which had just arrived, suddenly and violently jumped. Soon, the stars grew brighter and brighter as an immense amount of vital qi flooded into the room and mixed with Qin Mu's consciousness. This isn't the Supreme Palace enclosure higher knowledge that I imparted to him. This guy modified the method I imparted to him. He saw Qin Mu's vital qi fuse with his consciousness to form all sorts of runes. The big eyeball was furious and almost jumped before it coldly laughed. "Little brat, if you tamper with my race's technique and mess up, you won't even know how you died." At this moment, within the space of the grand primordium origin stone, an image of an ancient star god rose. That image belonged to ancient god Sai Lu, who resided in the Three Sages constellation. The big eyeball received a great shock, and instantly understood what Qin Mu was doing. Qin Mu was using the knowledge of his era to make up for the missing parts in the Supreme Palace enclosure higher knowledge. The Supreme Palace enclosure higher knowledge was only used to visualize the ancient gods. Meanwhile, Qin Mu's harvesting of vital qi to mix with the consciousness wasn't meant to visualize the ancient gods. It was meant to restructure the path to them via classic algebra and supreme molecule algebra. Although the Supreme Palace enclosure higher knowledge was complex, the visualization map of the ancient gods was mere simple visualization after all. Therefore, it paled in comparison to Qin Mu's runes of the great Tao of the ancient gods. After all, the runes of the great Tao of the ancient gods were the amalgamation of a million years of research. It even included algebra on rebirth, like Qin Mu's computational canon of supreme molecule. As the structures of the 78 star gods began to form, Qin Mu instantly felt that his consciousness began to uncontrollably coalesce and speed up. If I add the three primordial spirit undying God consciousness, will the cultivation speed be faster? As soon as he thought about that, he did exactly that. He immediately utilized the three primordial spirit undying God consciousness. Shu Jan immediately saw the sky and Supreme Palace enclosure with 3 layers of force. All sorts of forms of the ancient gods also tripled. The 3 layers of the Supreme Palace enclosure's force began to stack, soon followed by each of the ancient gods. This little brat. That big circular eyeball stared at him and thought, after his modification of the Supreme Palace enclosure higher knowledge, it became just as good as a complete 3 enclosure higher knowledge. The 3 higher knowledge includes the Supreme Palace enclosure higher knowledge, the Purple Forbidden enclosure higher knowledge, and the Heavenly Market enclosure higher knowledge, which can construct a complete technique when combined. Considering how he did so using just the Supreme Palace enclosure higher knowledge, could he be Grand Emperor Ju Yusha? Qin Mu didn't know what to think. After a short while, he felt that he had achieved a startling leap in his consciousness. This prehistoric technique is truly extraordinary, he praised uncontrollably. Suddenly, the eye within the heart of his brows twitched as its gaze moved from Yun Jianli onto Yun Chuxiu. Yun Chuxiu laughed sweetly at him, and Qin Mu replied with a smile. He used his third eye to observe Yun Chuxiu, but he failed to observe anything fishy about her. She was like an extremely pure lady that had youthful energy overflowing from her, engulfing her. In addition, her soul, primordial spirit, divine treasures, consciousness, and vital qi were all faultless. Her primordial spirit was very active, as if she was a young lady. Shu Jan, could you find any problems with this lady? Qin Mu asked, his consciousness pulsing. On the sacrificial altar of the grand primordium origin stone, the big eyeball suddenly shrunk, and became a giant ball of flesh. From within it, Shu Jan's voice emerged. I want you to continuously provide me with blood and consciousness for the next 3 months. This will allow me to grow ahead. After that, I will tell you whether there's a problem with this lady. Oh, then forget it, Qin Mu said. Shu Jan became furious, and the ball of flesh almost jumped. Qin Mu stared deep into Yun Chuxio's eyes, though he soon retracted his stare as his third eye slowly shut itself. He kept to himself for a moment, then said to Yun Jianli, there's a curse on your bloodline which is passed from generation to generation. Perhaps there's a way to cure it, but I have never seen such a serious curse. It will require a lot of time to cure. A bloodline curse. And Celestial Venerable has a way to cure it. Yun Jianli was both shocked and surprised. Due to his excessive excitement, his consciousness went into disorder, and he almost lost control of his vital qi. It was only prevented by the quick consumption of several spirit pills. It was only after Yun Jianli directed the power of the pills that his disorderly consciousness calmed down. He then apologized, saying, sorry for the loss of composure, Celestial Venerable, I hope you can understand. If you don't mind, you can stay at my house. After all, it's a residence of a Celestial Venerable. No one dares to touch the Yun residence without careful thought. He laughed bitterly. Although the abilities of the Yun family's male heir aren't much, the wife he marries is always extremely powerful. To be honest, my wife is a powerful figure with much greater capabilities. My grandmother and great-grandmother are also powerful people. It's just that they spoiled me a little bit too much. Qin Mu laughed. Well, I'm a Celestial Venerable after all. If people want to kill me, I doubt your residence would be able to protect me. If they dare to kill a Celestial Venerable, why would they care about the Yun family? Yun Jianli frowned slightly and said to Yun Chuxio, Sister, I will stay here for a couple of days. You will return to the Yun residence first and report to my grandmother and great-grandmother that I'm fine. Yun Chuxio acknowledged it as she rose with a laugh. I too would like to stay here and consult Celestial Venerable on some difficult problems. If I return later, you won't chase me out, will you? Qin Mu shook his head and replied, no. There are many houses here, so both of you can stay here to your heart's content. Yun Chuxio slowly withdrew from the slow-winding pavilion. Qin Mu rose and laughed, saying, I'll bring you to find a place to stay. Yun Jianli followed him, and both of them exited the slow-winding pavilion. Qi Jiui, Yang and the dragon Qilin followed them. The beauty of the jade pool was impeccable, and today, it was even more splendid than when Qin Mu was there in the past. As Qin Mu strolled around the pool, admiring the scenery, he suddenly asked, Brother Yun, how did you get to know Yun Chuxio? Yun Jianli laughed. Does Celestial Venerable have intentions towards her? Qin Mu laughed heartily and replied, she's a sweet, fair, and graceful lady that would be a good mate. Although I'm about to die, I feel that I can still find a good mate for one last time. Yun Jianli's expression grew grave before he admitted, to be honest, Celestial Venerable, I don't know her origins. Qin Mu was slightly startled. She's your sworn sister, yet you don't know her origins. Yun Jianli continued, I have never heard of her before. One day, she just suddenly appeared in the celestial heavens and shook the entire place. There were countless suitors after her, yet she grew close to me with an ambiguous intent, which almost got me killed. Not long ago, I was challenged countless times by her suitors. Luckily, I was capable enough to live through all of it, which made me more vigilant. Qin Mu laughed. Brother Yun, why are you vigilant? I'm a person that's about to die, while she's such a beautiful lady with countless suitors, which even includes a god king in the heavens above. Despite that, she chooses to accompany a dying person like me. Indifferently, Yun Jinli said, I'm not as narcissistic as Qi Jiui. I know that she has a motive for approaching me. Thus, I figured why not become sworn siblings with her and put her by my side to observe what she has planned. Qi Jiui was still in a muddlehead state and hadn't recovered from Yun Chuxiu's beauty. He smiled and blurted out, what should our child's name be? Qin Mu glanced at him in confusion, not knowing what sort of daydream Qi Jiui was having. Has Brother Yun discovered the motive of Yun Chuxiu? Qin Mu inquired. Yun Jinli smiled gently. Yes, I have. Her motive is you, Celestial Venerable Mu. Qin Mu was stunned and couldn't stop himself from smiling. Yun Chuxiu's motive is me. How could that be possible? Brother Yun, you must be joking. Yun Jinli replied firmly, Celestial Venerable Mu has returned to the celestial heavens, and I, as the only male heir of the Yun family, am bound to meet you due to my ancestor's command. That being the case, I'm the best way to get to know you. Besides. He stopped, and Qin Mu stopped too before asking, besides what? Besides, as one of the strongest divine bridge realm practitioners of the celestial heavens, should I become jealous due to her and slay you, it would be greatly detrimental to the Yun family. Yun Jianli laughed. If I, the only adult male within the Yun family, died at the hands of Celestial Venerable Mu, that would be interesting. The grandmother and great-grandmother of the Yun family would slay you in fury. In that scenario, you would be dead, and the Yun family would cease to exist, killing two birds with one stone. Qin Mu laughed. You'll become jealous. Yun Jinli panted slightly, shook his head, and replied, no. I'm already indifferent to life and death, so why would I be provoked by her? I'm just worried that you will be provoked by her. Qin Mu replied, well, that's not certain. Although she's pretty, she isn't the prettiest in my heart. Yun Jinli asked curiously, then, what do you, Celestial Venerable Mu, believe to constitute the prettiest lady? Without hesitation, Qin Mu answered, big breasts, a perky, but, with muscles sprinkled all over the body, on top of it being well built. Yun Jianli was utterly amazed. After a long while, he calmed himself down and jokingly said, Celestial Venerable Mu's idea of a perfect lady is truly unique. To be honest, I sent Yun Chuxiu away for another reason. That reason being the other command left behind by our ancestor. Qin Mu solemnly asked, what were the last words of Celestial Venerable Yun? Yun Jianli replied, our ancestor appeared many times using Celestial Venerable Mu's appearance, assuming the appearance during the Dragon Han era. Then, some people said that Celestial Venerable Mu had grown weaker, believing that our ancestor was no match for Celestial Venerable Mu and saying that he was a haughty person. He didn't continue on. Qin Mu replied, Celestial Venerable Yun wasn't weaker than me. Yet the world thinks otherwise. Yun Jianli sighed and continued, before our ancestor left, his last words were, firstly, to kowtow and plead guilty to the incident where he assumed Celestial Venerable Mu's identity. Secondly, the ancestor also wanted to know if his techniques could triumph against that of Celestial Venerable Mu's. In his last words, he commanded that his descendants show off his techniques to Celestial Venerable Mu should they meet him. Qin Mu smiled. Yet, your body is unwell, can you perform this task? Yun Jianli smiled confidently. Celestial Venerable Mu's body is also unwell. In fact, I was worried that you couldn't make it instead. Qin Mu laughed heartily. If it was in front of outsiders, my body certainly couldn't make it. However, if it's you, my body is in good condition. What is the name of Celestial Venerable Yun's technique? Yun gently leaned on the railing and looked at the Jade Sea. The sickly master chanted loudly, "The 1,000 peaks rise into the sky. When the road ends, the divine bridge raises. The stars close in on the blue skies above, and beneath it, the mortal world stretches vastly. When the road ends, the divine bridge raises." Qin Mu understood what this sentence meant, and finally understood why Celestial Venerable Yun opened the divine bridge, divine treasure. During that time, after Celestial Venerable Yu opened the life and death divine treasure, divine arts practitioners had no way out. Where there was no road, Celestial Venerable Yun raised a divine bridge, divine treasure. It was this treasure that inspired Celestial Venerable Yu, and it was then that Celestial Venerable Yu opened the Celestial Palace, at the end of the divine bridge. He clapped his hands and praised, "When the road ends, the divine bridge raises." Nice. How nice. Unfortunately, it's outdated. Part 372 end here. Thank you for watching.